The AI space moves so fast, literally so fast that it feels like every week there's a new development and with it a completely new way of doing things. And so a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs often find themselves in a position where they feel like a kid in a candy shop with so many ideas but no clue which one they should actually pick and which one they should invest in. And some other businesses are quote unquote waiting to see how the space changes before they actually get in and invest in AI. And so the $1 million question that my clients often ask me is, how can you win in a space that moves so fast? Well, in this video, I'll tell you the exact advice that I share with companies that make over $300 million in annual revenue. Now, if you guys don't know who I am, my name is Kia, and I've been working in the AI automation space for quite some time. And during my time, I've worked with businesses as small as your local brick and mortar business to large multinational enterprises with hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue. And so the AI automation strategy that I'll share with you in this video is one that will allow you to both win today and also position yourself in a way to win tomorrow, no matter how the space changes. But before I get into giving you the exact strategy, I first need to demystify AI and tell you what the current capabilities are and also what we believe the capabilities are going to look like in the future. So with that being said, let's not waste any more time and get right into it. So I've defined the capabilities all the way from the past to the present, all the way to the future, and I'm going to try go through it as quick as I possibly can. First, let's take a look at the past. So traditionally what we've had is rule-based automation, and as the name suggests, rule-based automation just allows you to automate a process by defining a set of rules. So the idea is that you would go from an input all the way to the output by defining the exact process in between. So in this example, what we've done is that we've gone from the input or the trigger A all the way to the output or the action D by defining the exact steps in between. So as you can see, the event A actually happening is acting as a trigger for event B to happen. And now that event B has happened, that's acting as a trigger for event C to happen. And now that event C has actually happened, it's acting as a trigger for event D to happen. And so what we see from a user perspective is that the trigger or the input or event A happened, and because of that, event D happened. And so we saw an automation of going from point A all the way to point D by defining the exact set of triggers and actions in between. So when it comes to rule-based automation, what actually has to happen is that the inputs have to all be well defined and the outputs also all have to be well defined in advance, and also the process of going from each input to each output also has to be well defined in advance, including all of the edge cases and all of the scenarios. And so realistically, the number of processes that you can automate with traditional rule-based automation is quite limited because you literally have to know every single edge case, and you're going to have to be able to map out all of it well in advance of actually sitting down and automating that specific process. And so a lot of times in real life, what we have to do as automators is that we build out these massive process maps that are sometimes an entire A3 paper wide, which literally defines every edge case and every single scenario and every single input and every single output. And then we go in and we define the automation step by step and we build it out on a platform like NA10. Now, to put this in perspective for you, a good example of a rule-based automation is just an out-of-office email reply. So when you think of an out-of-office email reply, you think that when you send anyone an email, straight away you get a reply that says the same thing every single time. It says, hey, sorry, I'm out of office. I'll get back to you in 2 months. No matter if you send a life-threatening message or if you just say happy birthday or happy Christmas, it's always going to reply with the same exact thing. So the idea is the trigger for the automation is literally any incoming email, and the actual output is always going to be the same exact email, which is going to say, hey, I'm out of office. I'll get back to you when I can. And so the actual process itself is very deterministic, and it can be automated with traditional rule-based automation. But then came the world of generative AI and these large language models where you put a bunch of text in and it gives you a bunch of text out. And so what that allowed us in the AI automation space is to build out what we call AI workflows. And realistically, AI workflows are no different to traditional rule-based automation. The only difference is you still map out that exact process, but now you can add large language models in the middle of that process. And because these large language models, they receive text or some sort of input and they give some sort of output, and every single time that output is different depending on the input that they receive, now the number of inputs and outputs you can give to the actual system is infinite. So for example, think of automating your SEO process. When it comes to automating your SEO process, the actual blogs that are being created every single time are going to be completely different every single time. So the outputs are infinite. The inputs that you provide the system is actually what's defining the blog at the end of the day. And the reason for that is that large language models in the middle are sitting down, taking in the inputs inputs and creating the copy for the output, which each time is going to look completely different. But the actual process that the inputs go through in order to get to the output, or the process map in between, is still very much rule-based and does still very much have to be deterministic in scope. So currently with AI workflows, we can still only automate processes that are repetitive, but because we have these large language models embedded inside that rule-based process, we have a bit more flexibility to automate slightly more dynamic processes. And because of that, we can now automate a lot of different SOPs that sit within businesses, like automating SEO, lead generation, and all the other operations type of automations that you can actually build. But what's important to remember is that it's still considered a rule-based automation, and so it still can only automate processes that are repetitive. Like if there's a lot of edge cases, then it's very hard for you to be able to automate that even using AI workflows today. Now, I've made a video on automating your SEO process, so if you guys are interested, go and watch it. It takes you through the exact process of automating blog posts, so you can literally leave it in the back end and it will create all these really good articles by itself with complete automation. I'm going to link in the description down below, so feel free to watch that. Now, with that being said, let's take a look at what is going to happen next. Now, if you guys have been following the world of AI, I am 100% certain that you have at some point heard the word AI agents. And honestly, it is coming very soon, so it's very important you familiarize yourself with exactly what they are and what capabilities they'll bring to us. Now, the idea of AI agents is that you'll set up these autonomous systems that can dynamically create the process of going from the input to the output. So with the AI workflows, as I said, you have to map out the process of going from the input to the output, whereas with autonomous AI agents, depending on the input that you provide them, and also if you can define the sort of desired output that you have, they will dynamically create the process of going from the inputs to the outputs themselves. And so with that being said, now you don't have to sit down and define every single edge case, and the number of processes that you can automate now vastly increases, because now you can automate non-repetitive processes, because you don't have to automate that specific process map. You will just let the AI agent itself figure it out on the go, similar to how a human or an employee would figure it out on the go. Now, another reason why autonomous AI agents are a massive change is that they allow large language models to now interact with their environment or actually do things in the real world. So when you think of ChatGPT, you think a chat model where you type a bunch of text and it types a bunch of text back to you and it doesn't actually do anything in the real world. But with autonomous AI agents, these large language models are now capable of doing things like searching through a database or booking things into your calendar or sending emails or booking a restaurant by taking control of your computer, like Operator by OpenAI and Anthropic's Claude computer use. But what truly makes these systems extremely powerful is that they are fully autonomous, meaning you don't necessarily have to have human oversight, or you don't necessarily have to jump in and help it do different parts of the process. The idea is that you tell it something to do or give it an objective and it goes and it achieves it all by itself without your help. And that's super, super valuable in a business context. And the final benefit of these autonomous AI agents is that they're capable of solving complex business problems. And the way they solve these complex problems is that if you were to give an AI agent a complex problem, it will break it down into smaller sub-problems or subtasks, solve each of those subtasks, and then eventually solve the overarching complex problem. And the reason why this is super important is because a lot of times in real business scenarios, the problems aren't one step or two step. They're pretty complex multi-step problems, and having these AI agents do them completely autonomously is a massive upside for any business that can implement them correctly. So let's take a look at an example of an autonomous AI agent that I built on N8N.
Generate a list of leads for founders of marketing agencies in London, United Kingdom, Chicago, United States, and Sydney, Australia. So as you guys can see, the AI agent runs, boom. And just like that, the AI agent responds with, I've added 272 new contacts for founders of marketing agencies in London, United Kingdom, Chicago, United States, and Sydney, Australia. And if we open up the Google Sheets that we've connected to the agent, you can see that now we have a list of 272 different founders for marketing agencies. And if we take a look at the actual location, you can see that the location is in line with what I actually requested from the AI agent. Now, let's say we're super interested in finding out more about this lead here, James Furman. We can just go and grab his LinkedIn URL and then tell the agent to research this lead and give the actual LinkedIn URL. And then just like that, the agent is going to run again. And after about a minute, the AI agent is going to respond with, the research on James Furman is now complete. please check your email for the full report. And if I open up my inbox, you can see that 0 minutes ago, we received an email that says James Furman Research Report. It's got a nice photo of him and his company. And then there's a whole bunch of information, including his information, his company's information, his interests, the similarities between us, different pain points and solutions to those pain points that we can offer as a business, and a whole bunch of other granular information as well.
And so as you saw in the example, what happened is I just had a chatbot and I gave it an objective, and then it went and autonomously found the exact output that I was after, and it gave that output to me. But realistically, all I saw was just a chat interface where I said, hey, go and find the list of 200 plus leads. And it went and found those leads, and it sent me a message saying, hey, just check your Google Drive. There's going to be a Google Sheet in there that has all the leads listed. And then I wanted to find out more about a specific lead. So I said, hey, can you research this person? And by itself, it went and created a research report and then sent me an email with all of the details regarding that specific lead. And so realistically, that's the idea about these AI agents. They're objective based, meaning you tell them a specific goal without telling them exactly how they're meant to achieve that specific goal given that specific input, and then they go and build out that process internally themselves and they solve that problem for you. But to be completely realistic, inside that video, I said I built an autonomous AI agent, but realistically, I gave it the exact process that it's going to go through every single time I give it an input. So if I tried to change my input slightly and I gave it different inputs, it was going to break and it wasn't going to know exactly what it's meant to do. And that's because of current capabilities. You can't actually build fully autonomous AI agents that can do these dynamic tasks themselves without it being predefined with AI workflows right now. And so that's why I always say in 2025, or as of May 2025, AI agents are just cool demos. And I can actually prove this to you mathematically. So let's say, for example, let's look at ChatGPT. If you were to type something into ChatGPT and ChatGPT were to give you an answer in a one-step process where that step is just you typing something in and it giving you an answer, let's say 98% of the time it's going to give you the right answer. That means only 1 out of every 50 times it's going to make a mistake, which is pretty good. But then when you think about a complex problem inside a business, most of the times it's not just going to be one step. Like the process map that I showed you guys before, that internal process might be an entire A3 paper wide. There will be all these different steps that the AI is going to have to go through, and each time the accuracy is going to be 98%. So realistically, what's going to happen is it's going to be step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and at each step, the accuracy is 98%. And what ends up happening is the overall accuracy of the system will then be 98% times 98% times 98% times however many steps it takes to solve that problem. And so if a problem is slightly more complex, where it just needs 10 steps for the AI to be able to solve it, it will go from 98% accuracy to overall accuracy of the system dropping to only 82%. That's 1 in every 5 times, or almost 1 in every 5 times, the AI is going to make a mistake. Now, in a real business scenario, if I were to implement something for someone for a business where once out of every 5 times they made a mistake, they're going to come back and they're going to try and sue me, because why the hell would they invest in technology where they're going to have to check it and make sure that it's not actually making a mistake, because it makes a mistake so often. And so realistically, even with 82% accuracy, you can't implement this into businesses yet. But I'm sure you can remember that I promised you AI agents can solve very complex problems, because honestly, most business problems aren't even solvable in 10 steps. They probably need 50 to 100 steps. Now, in a 100 step accuracy, it goes from 98% to 98% to the power of 100, which is only 13%. So the overall accuracy of the system is now 13%, meaning it's only going to get the right answer 1 out of every 10 times. Try and convince a business owner to build them something where it's only going to get the right answer 1 out of every 10 times. If you honestly convince them, send me an email and I'm going to shout you out. I'll be like, that's crazy. Because it's not possible. No one is crazy enough to invest in a solution where it only works 1 out of every 10 times. But with that being said, that's the capabilities today. It's honestly not possible to build out these fully autonomous AI agents that are multi-step. It's not to say that we're not going to have that very soon. I believe that over the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to have fully autonomous AI agents that are capable of doing these multi-step processes fully dynamically with a high enough accuracy where you can actually implement it into a business. And the things that we need in order to get to that point would be better models, larger context windows, more widespread adoption of tool use protocols like MCP, more widespread adoption of agent communication protocols, models that can use tools better, better, and so on and so forth. And with the current rate of advancements, honestly, we're moving towards this fully autonomous AI agents very quickly. And when we do finally get to fully autonomous AI agents, what we're going to have is AI employees. Now, the idea is that you'd have something like, for example, let's say a chatbot where you can talk to it verbally, or you can type a question or answer or whatever into it. And that's all you really see from a user standpoint, like the example that I showed you guys with the lead generation agent. And so if you give it an objective, it goes and it solves that objective, or it finds a desired output for you fully autonomously without you having to tell it exactly how to go and do that thing every single time. And so what we see from a user standpoint, as I said, is we just see a chatbot, but what actually happens in the back end is we have all of these specialized AI agents that are working together in these large multi-agent systems, and together they can handle a bunch of SOPs inside your business, similar to how an employee can. And that's why in the future, we're going to have AI employees that do different things inside your business, like an admin employee or an SEO employee or a lead generation employee or whatever employees you guys have within your business. And I'm sure that by now you can imagine just how powerful that would be. When a business has an AI agent, or let's say an army of AI agents that can handle their SOPs very well, and all they need to do is give it an objective, and it could do that same thing in the fraction of a time that a human would do it, and also at a fraction of the cost that a human would do it, and also 24/7, literally after hours, the upside for businesses is going to be absolutely massive. So I do think that when AI agents become fully autonomous in the future, and that is in the very near future, the way we conduct business is going to be changing completely. And so that's why I think the AI automation industry as a whole is going to grow exponentially over the next couple of years. Because don't forget, guys, right now we're still in the early adopters, and soon we're going to go to the early majority, and then the late majority, and then the laggards. And so realistically, if you look at the entire market, we're probably only got about, 10, 15% adoption as of today. Once AI agents come out, everyone is going to have to adopt it. And so there's still about 85% of the market that's sitting there with no solution yet. And that's why I love the AI automation space. And I think that it's a great space to get into if you guys are trying to build a business that is going to grow exponentially over the next couple of years. But now that we understand what the capabilities were in the past, what the capabilities are currently, and what the capabilities are going to be like very soon, let's look at what your AI automation strategy should look like. So as I said, the capabilities are going to change. Right now we have something, very soon we're going to have something else. And honestly, I have no clue. Maybe after AI agents, we're going to have something completely different, which is going to change the entire landscape one more time. And so for a business, when they're building an AI automation strategy and when they're going to invest in AI and automation, they have to not only have a short-term strategy that will allow them to make money and win today, but they should also have a long-term strategy that will allow them to position themselves in a way to be prepared that once a shift happens inside the industry, they'll be the first movers and they will win tomorrow as well. And what I'm going to share with you over the next couple of slides is going to teach you the exact way that you can do this for your own business today. And if you guys are AI automation experts, you can use this same exact strategy with your clients. So first, let's take a look at the short-term strategy. How can we win today? So as I said, the current capabilities are AI workflows. Basically workflows that have LLMs embedded in them, and they allow you to automate processes that are still somewhat repetitive, but the inputs and outputs can now be dynamic based off the actual task at hand. And so when you think of a business, there's still a lot of SOPs that you can automate using AI workflows. But I hope by now you understand that you shouldn't just go ahead and try and automate all of them. And so what I did is that I built a framework called the What, Why, When framework that allows you to choose the exact process or exact SOP that you should automate first. And taking a look at it, first we start with the what. And what the what entitles is what should you automate, or realistically it should be what can you automate? So when you want to see whether an SOP is automatable with AI workflows, the question that you can ask yourself is it repetitive? Now, if it's not repetitive, meaning that you can't necessarily define the exact process map with all of the edge cases in advance, then realistically, that's not a process that you can automate with AI workflows. So you should scratch that straight away. But then if it actually is repetitive, then you can ask yourself these three questions. And depending on the answer to these three questions, you will realize if that's a process that you can automate or not. The first question is it time consuming? Meaning, does it take a lot of time for you to perform that task manually once? The second question is it high volume? Meaning, do you have to do that process a lot of times, let's say a day? And the third question is it error prone? Meaning, when you have humans doing it, is it prone to making errors? Now, if you have a process that isn't time consuming, isn't high volume, and also isn't error prone, then realistically, that's a process where there's no point of you actually automating it. So I would scratch that SOP as well. But now let's say you found an SOP that passes the what, meaning it's repetitive and it's either time consuming, high volume, or error prone, or a combination of the three. Then you should ask yourself the question of why should I actually automate this process? And when it comes to automating a process, you should think of three desired outcomes. An automation should either always save you time, save you money, or make you money. And from my experience, when I talk to clients, which one of these three they really care about depends on the size and scale of their business. When I usually talk to smaller businesses, because they've got limited resources and they don't have enough manpower, they usually care about saving time. And so the automations that we build out for them are usually automations that will allow them to step back or their employees to step back, and so they can save some time. Whereas when I talk to bigger businesses, they don't really have the resource problem. So their idea is more monetary. They want to build out a system that will either save them money or make them more money. And when it comes to saving time, realistically, how you should think of it is if you build out an automation that takes you 2 hours and it saves you 2 hours per day, then that automation is saving you time. So you should do that automation. It's high ROI. Whereas when it comes to the monetary aspect of automations, saving money and making money realistically is the same exact desired outcome. Because when you think of a business, at the very top line, you have revenue, which is all the money that your business makes. Then you have to negate expenses from that revenue, which is the amount of money you'd had to spend as a business to make that revenue. And then what you would get as a result of this equation is your net profit, which is the actual profit that you take home as a business. Now, whether the automation makes you money, meaning it allows you to make more sales and it increases your revenue, or whether the automation allows you to save money, meaning it allows you to reduce your expenses, it's going to have the same effect. What it's going to do is it's going to increase your profits. So realistically, an automation either has to save you time or increase your business's profits. And if an automation doesn't achieve any of these objectives, then realistically, that's a process that you should not automate and you should leave it manual. And also, this is a good way of thinking about different automations you can sell. When it comes to automations that make you money, you can think of automations that sit inside the marketing and sales department of your business, because they allow you to obviously sell more and get more clients, which in turn makes you more money. And when you want to think of automations that reduce your expenses, think of automations that allows you to automate processes that employees are currently performing. And so by reducing headcount, you're technically reducing your expenses. And that's more so internal processes, more niche custom solutions for businesses. And obviously, when it comes to saving time, almost all of these processes save time anyway, but then that is also very much dependent on who you're building it for and what they spend the most amount of time on. And if that process is repetitive, then it's obviously worth automating. And so now let's say we've found a process that both fits the why and the what. Then you have to ask yourself the question of when, which is really just a question that tells you, are you ready to automate this process yet or not? And this is the mistake that I see happen a lot with smaller businesses, because they try to automate processes that they've never done before. And realistically, if you've listened along to the entire video, what I said is that these AI workflows are still very much deterministic processes. They're processes where we know exactly what's meant to happen, and then we go ahead and we automate that specific process. And so realistically, the automation is only ever going to be as good as the actual process itself. So if you haven't performed the process before and you haven't optimized it over time, you can't necessarily expect to have an automation that now achieves excellent results. Because if you can't achieve excellent results manually, you definitely can't achieve excellent results with automation. And so what I always tell my clients is, how many times have you performed this task? If it's something that you've never done before, I probably wouldn't recommend you automate it. If it's something that you've done 10 times or 100 times and you've optimized it so much and you've A/B tested it, then that's the perfect process for automation, because you've already proven that it actually works. And as an AI automation expert, I advise for you guys to do the same thing, because a lot of times your clients are going to assess you based off the outputs of that automation. And if they don't even know if the automation actually is going to bring them results, and they're trying to get you to automate it, and they come back to you and they're like, wait, but you told me this is going to work and now it's not, well, you've got yourself in a pretty bad situation. And so you always have to tell your clients that the automation is only ever as good as the process. If you don't know if the process is going to work, I recommend you do it manually a couple of times until you know that it's going to work, and then you can give it to me, I can automate it, and together we can can achieve scale. And with that scale, obviously you're going to make more money or save time or save money or whatever it's going to be. But the moral of the story is that automation should be one that you've definitely done manual before, and you know that 100% it's a process that will work. This is very important in marketing automations because a lot of times small businesses, they want to automate a marketing process that they've never done before, and they hope that because you've automated it now they can suddenly make $1 million. But realistically, if you don't know that your target market is going to like that specific marketing channel or that specific marketing process, the AI automation expert can only do so much. And so that is the when component of the what, why, when framework. So the what, why, and when together tells you which SOPs inside your business should you actually automate. And then once you go through the entire what, when process, you'd probably find, let's say, 5 to 10 SOPs that you can and should automate. But the worst thing you can possibly do is go ahead and bill your client for, let's say, 10 or 20 automations or 5 automations or whatever, and try and build them all out at once. Because realistically, automation is a journey, it's not a destination. And so with that being said, instead of you going ahead and trying to do all of these SOPs, what you should do is you should choose the first SOP that brings the highest ROI, and then the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one, and the fifth one, and so on and so forth after that. So you should start with one SOP, and then the next one, and the next one, and the next one after that. And the only way to do this, as I said, is for you to perform an ROI analysis. An ROI basically just means return on investment, because an automation is basically just an investment that that business is making. And so you should assess all of these 5 or 10 SOPs based off the return that they bring to the business and choose the automation that's going to have the highest return on investment, whether that's monetary or whether that's in terms of quick turnaround time. So find the automation that's going to bring them the highest ROI in the shortest amount of time. Do that one first, and then do the next one and the next one after that. And guys, I promise you, if you guys are running an AI automation agency, that's a much better way of doing it because it allows you to maximize the customer lifetime value, because people are going to come back and they're going to trust you with another automation after that as well, as opposed to you trying to get a massive ticket up front and get, I don't know, 50K from them or 100K from them. And then you get stuck building out the automations. Your client never actually sees any ROI and they decide to cancel the project. And now you've actually lost a very valuable customer. And so the what, why, when framework and the ROI analysis is going to tell you exactly which process you should automate first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on and so forth. But as I said, the AI automation space moves so fast. Right now, whatever we build might be completely wiped out tomorrow with new technologies and new capabilities and new ways of doing things. And so the idea is that you have to build out an AI automation strategy that's going to future-proof you whilst allowing you to win in the short term. And these 5 tips or 5 points is exactly how you're going to achieve that for your business. So the first thing you should definitely keep in mind is that you should always try to keep it lean. I would never ever recommend for any business to build out their own automations using code today, because building something out with code is going to cost you significantly more than building it out on a platform like N8N or any other low code, no code, drag and drop platform. And so it costing you a lot more is going to expose you to a lot more risk. Because let's say, for example, if we build out something on N8N for 5K, if tomorrow you have to pivot and build it a completely different way using AI agents or whatever, you've only lost 5K. But if we were to sit down and build out a proprietary product with code for you, and tomorrow a much better way of doing things came out and it cost you, let's say 20K, now you've lost 20K. And so the ROI that you actually got in that time period was a lot less. And that's why for our business, we actually pivoted from writing code to now building these no code and low code automations on these platforms like N8N, because with that, our clients can now keep it lean, focusing on getting as much ROI as quick as they can. And then later on, if we have to change and pivot, then that's completely fine because we only spent as much as we needed to build out the actual automation that gave us the result without having to sit down and worry about making it proprietary. And honestly, if you guys are in the AI automation space, I'm sure that you've heard from some clients where they're like, oh, but we don't want to be platform dependent because let's say, for example, if we're building something on N8N or GHL, we don't want to be susceptible to the fact that if N8N goes out of business tomorrow, we then lose our automation. And honestly, to a large degree, they're completely right in worrying about that because technically it is possible. I don't work in N8N or GHL's board of directors, so I don't literally know what decisions they make and I don't know what the future of their business is going to look like. But what I do know is that the space moves extremely quickly, and the only way that you can truly win is if you keep it lean, focus on getting high ROI, and be ready to pivot at any point in the future. So the idea of being ready to pivot is positioning yourself in a way that you're not attached to any specific solution or product. And that's extremely important. If you spend a lot of money, you get attached to that proprietary product. And now, even if the space changes, you're still trying to market that product and you're still trying to focus on that product that you've built till now, where all your competitors are now taking advantage of a much better technology and they're going to absolutely wipe you out. And so the idea in the AI space is for you to be free and liquid like water, which is I think something that Bruce Lee said, like be liquid like water. I don't know if that was exactly what he said. But the idea is that you have to be flexible, you have to not be attached to anything, and you have to be ready to pivot at any point in time when there is a much better way of doing things. Because there will 100% be a much better way of doing things tomorrow. But also from a technical standpoint, there is certain things you can do when you're building out these projects to ensure that you're ready to pivot and ensure that you're keeping it lean. And that's building out systems using modular architectures. And the idea about modular architectures, if you guys aren't from a tech background, is to basically just build out systems in individual modules that communicate with each other but aren't necessarily dependent on each other and aren't necessarily built into each other. So the idea is in the future, if we have to change a part of a process that we've already made, we can just plug and play and just change this process and connect it to the other ones, as opposed to now having to build out the entire system from scratch. So think, for example, when you build out an automation on NA10, if tomorrow a better large language model comes along, like if we have GPT, I don't know, 05 mini or 5.5 or something like that, I don't have to go and build out the entire automation anymore, because NA10 just allows me to now choose the new AI model. And by choosing the new AI model, now I've updated my system to the most current capabilities. And the idea of building out modular architectures is exactly that. You want to build it out in a way that you can plug and play in the future, and so you keep the cost of having to pivot minimal. And so modular architectures are extremely important when you're building out these systems. And building out on NA10 actually allows you to build out systems using modular architectures with minimal technology expertise. Now, the next one is one that I'm pretty passionate about, and that's starting with deterministic tasks. I see a lot of people trying to build out AI agents today. And as I said, like AI agents aren't there in terms of capabilities, but technically if you keep the human in the loop, what you can do is you can build out a system that's going to send you a message every single time it wants to do something, and then you give it the go ahead or you say no, and based off your feedback it goes and does that thing. And so technically what's really happening here is that you're trying to build a capability that's going to happen in the future today by taping and band-aiding things together. But realistically, when it comes to the AI space, that's a big mistake, because tomorrow there's going to be a much easier way of doing things just with AI agents. So there's realistically no point for you to try and build something that isn't really there with current capabilities. So how I like to think of this point is that you should only focus on tasks that are deterministic and really repetitive, to the point that if tomorrow, for example, there is AI agents, there would be no real ROI for you to have to shift your current project to an AI agent-based project. And so the idea is to focus on tasks that you can do really well right now with current capabilities, and even if capabilities change, there would be no real reason for you to want to shift. So focus on deterministic tasks that probably won't require you to pivot in the future. And then the last one, which is probably the most important one of all, is that you should focus on high and quick ROI. So as I said in the previous section, you should do an ROI analysis to figure out which process you want to automate first. And how high the ROI isn't the only thing that you should consider. You should also consider how quick the ROI is, because let's say in 6 months, if you have to pivot and you're still building out that first project because it took 6 months for you to build out, then realistically you saw no ROI. All you had to do is just pay expenses and you didn't really get anything back. So the idea is that in the AI automation space today, because tomorrow there might be a much better way of doing things, I always tell my clients that we should focus on projects that allow us to get high ROI very quickly. So let's say, for example, if we build out a 20K project that gets us 60K in returns, meaning we made a net profit on that project of 40K, that's still 40K that we made. So if it only took us, let's say, 1 month to build this out, and the client had this set up for 5 months, and then after the 6-month point, we now have to pivot and do it again, the client still made 40K. So that was an investment that was worthwhile. Whereas if we now try to build out a project that's 100K and it takes 6 months for us to build it, and by the end of that 6 months, we now have to pivot and do it a completely different way, the client never saw any return on investment. So it was pretty much a waste of money. Now you can argue that the client learned and they gathered data and they figured out the right way of doing things during that 6 months, and that's valuable, and I kind of agree with you there as well. But the idea is to focus on high, quick ROI, build that relationship, and then over time, as the space changes, your client and you are ready to change with the space, and then you can be first movers inside your industry and you can absolutely kill the competition. And so summarizing summarizing this page, keep it lean, be ready to pivot, build out modular architectures, focus on tasks that won't necessarily need you to pivot in the future, and focus on high and quick ROI first. And if you can do these 5 things when you're building out a automation strategy, then I promise you're going to be very successful. Now, let's talk about the long-term strategy, how we can position ourselves today so we can win tomorrow. But the idea is, as an organization, you should constantly keep yourself up to date with AI advancements, and so you would know when you want to pivot. And that's where I will obviously keep you guys informed. So whenever there is a technological change or whenever there's a new development, I guarantee you that you will see me building out projects on my YouTube channel, and you see me talking about and educating you guys there. So as long as you guys hit the bell notification and subscribe to my channel, I will keep you guys informed, and you will be the first person to know. So the first idea is you should always educate yourself and keep up to date. Then you should obviously be agile. You should be ready to pivot, which I already talked about before. But the third one, which is probably my favorite one, is that you should be data conscious today. And I've talked about this in my previous videos as well. Honestly, data is the new oil. Data is super, super, super important for the future of any business. And so I always tell all businesses that they should try and store as much high quality proprietary data as much as they can. And the idea behind why proprietary data is super important is that in the future, labor is no longer going to be a scarce resource, because you're going to have an army of AI employees that are going to cost you little next to nothing, and you can hire them. And so labor isn't necessarily going to be something that's super scarce like it is today. In the future, the scarce resource for businesses is actually going to be proprietary data. And the reason why proprietary data is super important goes back to the idea of how AI is actually made and how AI agents are going to be made in the future. Now, AI itself is basically just a system that you feed it a bunch of data, and then it can mimic the patterns inside that data to then give an output and predict. And by continuously predicting the next data point, it's able to generate data, which we see as the form of generative AI, and we see it as a form of ChatGPT writing text when you text something to it and creating images and the likes of. But the idea is that the system is fed a bunch of data, and then that makes the AI smart so that it can actually perform tasks. Now, in the future, when we have AI agents, it's going to be the same exact process. You're going to have a horizontal AI agent, which is an AI agent that's not necessarily specialized in any specific SOP. You're going to feed it a bunch of your company proprietary data, and then now, because it's seen the examples of how your company's performed those tasks in the past, it then becomes a specialized AI agent that can perform your company's SOPs very well. And so then in the future, how I see it is that the better the data, the better the AI agent. So the better the data, the better the AI agent. Let that sink in. So if you understand that concept, you will then understand why proprietary data is super important. And so my advice to you is that you should invest in keeping as much proprietary data as humanly possible. You should track every call, every message, every DM, every lead, every interaction, every sale, every quote, every success, every failure, every conversation, every error. Literally everything inside your business should be tracked starting now if you haven't done it yet. And that is the biggest advantage big enterprises have over small businesses, because big enterprises are extremely data conscious and they invest thousands, if not millions of dollars in making sure that they have infrastructure that's going to capture all of their proprietary data and store it. And in the future, when you're building out these AI agents, that's going to give them a massive competitive advantage, because it's going to allow them to build out these specialized AI agents that know how to do their specific SOPs very, very well. And so my advice to every business owner is to focus on proprietary data today. Track as much data as you can, so tomorrow you can build out these specialized AI agents and employees for your business. And so with that being said, the most important thing that you should consider is that the space is moving very fast. You should focus on building out a strategy that will allow you to both win today and tomorrow. And the way you're going to do that is by keeping it lean and focusing on proprietary data. And so in the short term, you should only build out projects that are going to give you high, quick ROI, and you shouldn't be attached to any of those projects. And you should be ready to pivot in the future so you can be a first mover inside your industry. And that's how you're going to get the highest ROI. And that's how you're going to have the highest amount of competitive advantage. And that's how you're going to win today and also in the future. Now, that's all for another video. If you guys found this video valuable, I would really appreciate it if you like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments down below. If you guys have any other AI automation strategy tips that you tell your own clients, feel free to put it down in the comments below so we can all learn from you as well. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next video.